Hello, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I need to announce that I have co-streaming rights for, of course, First Stand in English. I'm super excited about that. Thank you, Riot Games. That's going to be super fun. I'm going to co-stream the whole event from Monday to Sunday next week, so make sure to follow me on twitch.tv. First Stand, for those who don't know, is an international tournament with all, of course, the major region winners coming into this, and it's going to be fearless. It's going to be a single round robin best of 3. Top 4 gets seeded into a single elimination bracket best of 5. Full fearless rock and roll. The action never stops. Super exciting stuff. Additionally, I already did the video on lane swaps being removed, so that's going to be, of course, an added element to all of this craziness, but I'm going to talk more about how that affects each team in the next coming video, because we're going to break down each and every team at First Stand. But let's talk about the players first, and let's make a tier list. It always sparks a lot of conversation. I have my biases, you have my biases. I'm going to show you my biases and what I think is important. I haven't watched enough LCP to judge the players, but I think it's safe to assume, based on what I've seen, is that they should be, of course, the weakest team at this tournament. Let's begin with top lane. Top lane, pretty straightforward. I do think Zeus is literally the best player in the world right now. I think what he has done in Our Life, in terms of how he has adapted to Fearless, in terms of how complete he is as a player, it is very hard to point to any flaws that he has. I think Zeus is undeniably just the best player in the world right now. I don't think anybody comes close. A lot of the usual suspects are not a part of the conversation because they didn't make deep enough runs. Zeus was so instrumental and really carved out a lot of carry potential through a role that was perceived as something that was neutered due to the fact that you can't play carries due to lane swaps, which obviously is untrue because it's just an element of the game. And later, how you manage your economy, how Zeus is farming, how he finds his team fight angles, how he generates gold, and how he leverages that economy. It's just phenomenal. I hope that every top lane at this tournament is actually learning from Zeus. An additional detail that is kind of funny is that T1 is not at this tournament, but we have a lot of former T1 top laners here in Kana, in Zeus, and of course in Impact. But let's continue down the list. 369. I think a lot of international viewers, they don't think too highly of 369, which is understandable. Last year, his stints were not the greatest. But I do think in the run-up of top esports and how well they scaled into, of course, the bracket. For those who don't know, top esports made a massive lower bracket run where they had to play so many best of 5s to even reach the finals and then to dominate the finals. And I think a big part of that is the fact that Jackie Love and 369 have found really good form again. So 369, I do think it makes sense for me to put him second, even though I think there are certain circumstances where you can argue maybe I kind of go ahead of him, but I think it's too soon to say, because the competition in LPL for top lane is quite vicious. And I think a big problem for 369 and Top East was last year was the fact that lane swapping, they just sucked at it. There was very rare that Top East would start a lane swap without 369 dying or burning flash or getting dove. He managed his economy super bad, so I believe the 369 should be the second best top lane coming into this. Now the main question here, right, is Kana versus Impact. I do think that Kana, in terms of his team fighting, his individual skill, I do think that I have to put him above Impact. Impact made a resurgence, and I think a big thing for Impact is his experience and how he has kind of, built his gameplay around, of course, the lane swap meta. If you look at his champion pool, I do think that Kana, another player that is experienced because he's been to Worlds a couple of times. Everyone calls Casey the rookie roster, but obviously Kana is very experienced. He's been to Worlds a couple of times, and I do think in terms of his form, what he has accomplished in the region as well, I do think that Kana, I will put him above Impact this time around. So Impact is going to be my fourth one. This is a very tight tier list, but that's what it is because we have so few players, but tier lists are always fun. So let's just continue. For me here, in terms of jungle, this is probably the one that might be the most controversial, but here Kanavi is going to go first for me. In terms of how our lives run, because everyone's going to ask about Peanut, is I do think that jungle was kind of in a weird, peculiar spot because when it came to Canyon and Peanut's performance, it wasn't that good in winter. There were a lot of games where they single-handedly threw. A lot of the games that Peanut that he stood out on were select champions like the Zyra and so forth. And there's the usual suspects, where Peanut performs good, like his Nidalee or his Skarner or some of the tanks, which of course Peanut's going to do fine on. But I think for the majority of time, How Alive had to pick up the slack back for him. And I think due to the underperformance of Canyon, I think in most cases that was an easy task. The best two performing junglers in the LCK were Owner and Lucid, and I think that they performed much better than Canyon and Peanut in their counterparts. So seeing the Gen G How Alive rivalry play out, Peanut wasn't a central part in making sure that went How Alive's way. I would give that credit more to, of course, Delight, Zeus, and of course Zeka too, who had a massive resurgence in the playoffs. So here, the next one that might be controversial is that I'm putting Yike above Peanut. I think Yike has been insanely consistent and he has a very good range of champions. I do think that Yike is LEC's little owner. He has very, very good smites, very good game sense, and he has a very specific role on this team. Even though I could see Yike playing carries, I think most of the time they want him something that, of course, can create space and be a playmaker due to the nature of how Kana likes to play the game. So I'm going to put Yike above Peanut, and I know that people are going to get very, very angry at me for that. So fourth, even though I didn't watch too many of the games, based off of me seeing Umti, I'm putting Junjia above him. Like I said that I'm not going to include CFO players, but I'm putting Umti tier list here. Like I'm just putting him down there because Umti, honestly, it's a miracle that Team Liquid even made it with the form that Umti had. Even in game 3, he against 100 Thieves, he tried to sabotage. You can make a montage out of the crazy things that Umti has pulled out and what he's delivered. So with that being said, like Umti is the anchor that is holding Team Liquid back, and in some kind of fucked up way, you know, there's just training weights for all the Team Liquid players because what they needed to do to get here was kind of nutty. All right. Let's continue on to mid lane. The mid lane is a tricky one because between Cream and, of course, Zeka, I do think that Cream was really, really, really consistent in the regular split. I think that he had a good range of champions that played. Zeka, I think I give a lot of credit to mid laners that managed to thrive in the LCK specifically due to the competition. Looking at the form of Faker, Showmaker in winter, Zeka being a player that consistently performed in those best of fives, in those game fives, and as things progressed, I think is a massive, massive golden star for me. Usually it would be like Chovy, BDD, the usual suspect, but I do think that Faker and Showmaker played really, really well in winter, and Zeka had to conquer that. And I think Cream, in a similar fashion to Vladi, I think Cream and Vladi served a very, very similar role for their teams in terms of raising the floor at all times, because as I mentioned before, top esports did have slow starts and they started in the lower bracket and it looked iffy at times, and Cream kind of held it down up until the point where his team was ready to perform and to deliver. And I think Vladi was insanely consistent through and through, and the mid lane pool here is super, super exciting because I think that the differences between the players is the one, this is where I think it's the most minimal. I can easily see a world where Vladi will never be the problem against the players above him, but this is just a question of the experience behind everything, and at the same time the competition that they had to face. Even though in that conversation I know people are going to say Vladi had tough competition too in caps, and that is very, very fair to say, but this is Vladi's first international tournament. I think this is a fair placement because I think all these three mid laners had a central point in how they got here. APA, as a player, APA, he found his resurgence there in the last best of 5 that they played. They were very close series against Isurus. I think he was also underperforming while he was exploring new champions to play. But when he got back to the usual, the Ziggs games, the Aurelion Sol games, you could see, the Talia as well was a big one for APA. When he was playing Comfort, he looked super, super good within his region. But the inconsistency of Team Liquid and, the kind of shakiness of it all, I do have to pinpoint APA as the second player that was the most problematic behind Umti, but there was still a massive gap between them in terms of how much pain they cause for the team. So APA is going to be the fourth one. APA, coming into internationals, sometimes, does pretty decently, so we'll have to see how he does against Europeans, because in the end, he's a shit talker, had good record against Humanoid and whatever, but I don't think that matters too much in this conversation. All right. Next in line, we have bot lane. I think Viper Delight is hard to make an argument against. And then the follow-up, I think, is also very hard to make an argument against the Jackalov and Crisp and Viper and Delight. Delight, best support at this. Like, you could argue that he's the best performing support in the world as well. I think he's been really, really good in the playoff run of Hanwha Life. I do think that LCK is just the most competitive region right now. When we look at the teams and the bar that they set in T1, D+, Hanwha Life, and Gen G, I do think it was giga tight and close and very competitive, while LPL was all up in the air and the performances fluctuated super much, and you had a lot of big underperformers in some of the names and teams that we thought would make a deeper run, like Weibo Gaming or, for example, Bilibili or IG, Copium. All right, next in line, I am going to put Yeon and CoreJJ at the next bot lane. I know that, there's probably a lot of KC fans, EU fans are going to watch this, but I need to be, truthful. It's very important. I think that CoreJJ and Yeon is a player that has been insanely consistent. He has been so damn good for very long, even in the Worlds run last year. It started, of course, in spring playoffs, and he's just hit a stride that he just has never let go of. Last year, when Team Liquid was at the World Championship and they were playing series against some of the minor region teams, Yeon was the one who brought them over the finish line. His team was underperforming due to meta shifts and meta changes, because Team Liquid, of course, is a team that, a lot of their players want to stick to 3 champions and they want to play things based on repetition. But I think that Yeon is the one that can play with a very wide range of champions. CoreJJ as well carries a lot of experience, and I think time and time again he just stands as the best performing support in the region. It's just such a reoccurring theme, and I think it comes from his map understanding, his engaged play, his confidence in knowing where to be and what to do. And at the same time, Yeon and CoreJJ, due to them playing together for so damn long, this is a bot lane that is insanely experienced together. That is the big thing. While Kalist and Taragamas has played played and laned together for different periods of time, right? They did that in summer, and then Targamas, joined the LEC, and then they had, of course, the Kalist age thing happened and so forth. It's something that stands out, while obviously Kalist and Targamas are very strong players, and Kalist is a super talent for sure. In terms of their lane phase, that is the big question mark for KC as they move out of a lane swap meta, because that is where some of the other teams, especially, for example, Fnatic, got the better end of them. And once again, I think that the pool of bot lanes above them is very formidable and super strong. So there's no shame in being fourth here. There's no shame in being fourth at all. I hope everyone sees that, but it's important to be truthful, because I think Yeon and CoreJJ do deserve respect here. I think that the list looks pretty fair here. I know that the Peanut Yak one is going to be a little bit controversial. I think that mid lane pool is where maybe Vladi could do things to etch in, but that is my list. If you want to have the best players of this tournament, I think it's just some combination of these rows kind of forming whatever. Let's not do it this time. So I repeat, I'm going to drop a big video tomorrow about a breakdown of each team. It's going to be rather short, 2 minutes per team, just some quick hits, things to pay attention to. And then on Sunday, we're going to release a very big breakdown of KC versus Team Liquid in terms of what are the opportunities to really, like the attack vectors and how that matchup is going to play out. Because obviously, NA versus EU is always equally exciting. And then predictions and all that good jazz. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you're thinking below. I'll catch you guys on the next one, and peace.